Welcome to TechIsland Summit, the third one in 2023. We have the pleasure today to have together with us three distinguished guests, ambassadors of countries that are considered to be among the global leaders in technology and innovation. We have the pleasure to have with us Her Excellency Julie Fisher, representing the United States of America, Her Excellency Anke Schlimm from Germany, and His Excellency Mr. Anolik from the State of Israel. Basically, TechIsland started with the bold vision of making Cyprus a top destination for talent and for companies. And actually, this journey, we see that evidently has started, and Cyprus slowly is becoming a destination for professionals and for companies. Only in 2022, the contribution of the ICT sector for the economy of Cyprus was around 13%, 50% more than 2 years ago, which is very significant for the economy of the country. And that also reflected with the fact that Cyprus is among the stronger performers in the European Union in terms of the GDP growth and the economic growth. However, there are challenges for Cyprus, and we are here to hear from you what you did well and why you succeeded in these fields. I will start with the US ambassador. You have this brilliant example of the Silicon Valley, but which were the main ingredients behind building Silicon Valley and driving it to succeed, and what Cyprus has to do towards becoming a tech hub?
All right, thank you, Marius. I don't know, is this working? Can everybody hear me? All right.
Keep it closer.
Hold it closer, okay.
Yeah.
It is such a pleasure, Marius, to be here today. It is my first engagement with TechIsland, and I would like to say that I'm fully in favor of more discussions that are literally on the water, more discussions that are outside. Like, this is absolutely fantastic, and what a great way to focus on these really important issues. Look, your question about Silicon Valley and starting there, Silicon Valley is an example that almost feels so out of reach. There's so much to derive from Silicon Valley's example, but fundamentally what brought people together in Silicon Valley in the 1950s was a desire to leverage all of the academic work that was being done. It was a place that the Department of Defense could go and find partners for investment, particularly in the early stages of DARPA, as we were looking to think about the next levels of competition that the United States of America would face in the post-war era. And it was the ingenuity, it was the innovation, it was some of these principles that we think of as really bedrock American capitalist principles that brought all of this together in a way that was so meaningful and that grew quite organically, particularly in the early years. But once this started to come together, what was clear was that the partnership from the government was an absolutely essential component. What was clear was that the ability, and I don't think people thought about it in this way in the 70s or maybe even the 60s, but the ability to protect intellectual property, the ability to ensure that courts could quickly address disputes amongst various commercial actors, right? That there was remedy for those disputes on a fairly immediate basis. I think that was absolutely essential. I think that the ready availability of deeply skilled labor, right? And that meant everything from local policies and housing. I just listened to the last panel. Of course, these elements are important, but it also meant the willingness of the federal government to create visa and immigration policies that allowed for the influx of highly skilled labor from the sources from which we needed it. And so the Silicon Valley model has been decades in the making, but I think what we see in it is, and again, I'll lean on some of the comments in the last panel, it was maybe not that people had a 30-year, a 40-year, or a 50-year plan, but they were able to see a decade, 2 decades into the future as to what was needed, and to really come up with smart partnership and innovation tools that I think have made a huge difference. One of the things I would point towards now that I think is incredibly important in the United States is this sense of competition, right? Silicon Valley is such a special and unique place in the United States, and all of you know that. But the places that are probably equally as well known to you, in Texas, in Northern Virginia, in Massachusetts, right? These are all competitors. They're competitors for investment dollars, they're competitors for the labor pool, they are competitors for startups, and that sense of competition, much less with our international friends and partners, right? It helps feed, I think, a very important and very productive cycle of innovation in the United States.
Thank you very much. It is indeed very interesting to hear, and exactly this, what you said about the intellectual property protection and the skilled labor need, and this competition, of course, I suppose it was something that drove this model to further develop. And this intrigues me to go to Israel. I was serving as a commercial counselor at the Embassy of Cyprus in Tel Aviv. So in my previous life, I was also working at an embassy. I had the pleasure and the honor of listening to one presentation by the late Shimon Peres. He was speaking about Startup Nation. And his introduction was, back in the 80s, we had no friends. Geopolitically, we were an island. So we had to come up with a vision. So I would like to hear your comments on how has Israel managed to become the startup nation, and what are the examples for Cyprus to follow towards this path?
Can you hear me? Well, Marius, thank you very much for the invitation. I enjoy being here. It's my 3rd time I'm in the Reflect Festival, and I still insist on coming with a suit and a tie. I don't know why. Maybe next time I will learn. And also thank you for the question. I think that innovation has been part of the DNA of Israel from the very first years, and it comes a lot from necessity. I mean, necessity is the mother of invention. When you don't have any other choice, you have to do something about this. And when Israel was established, it is true, we were quite isolated in the world. We didn't have anyone really to support us the way that we have maybe today with the United States. We were a very small nation. We were smaller than Cyprus is today. We had only 600,000 citizens back then. And we had no natural resources as well. So you start from this, and you have to build yourself your own way as what do you do in order to survive? Because as you know very well, our geostrategic situation was not a Scandinavian one, let's put it this way. And therefore, along the years, we've created some methods and some ways that creates where we are today. First of all, we invest heavily, as a government, we invest heavily in R&D. It's a policy of the Israeli government to invest a large portion of our GDP into R&D. It's very important for us. Secondly, since the most important thing for us is the human resource, this was also another thing that we invested heavily in. We had no other resource, so this is what we had to invest into, and we think that the people is the most important asset that we have. We also try to put a spin on or take advantage of our challenges in a positive way. Because of our security situation, we invested a lot in security and defense development, and we had to find our own ways of doing things, because again, if you go back to the beginning, nobody would have sold us anything. And so in this way, we have turned the situation we were in, we were embargoed, into an advantage because we had to do everything ourselves and we were able to develop this. And I think also to a certain extent the fact that back then we didn't have any natural resources was also a very, we turned it into a positive thing. You have to do what you can with the brains. And along the years we created this ecosystem that includes the government, that I said heavily investing in R&D, the academia, which is a very important element here in innovation and thinking. It's a private sector, of course, which is a very important locomotive. And in our case, it's also the security system. It's the military, the IDF, and other security services. And this created this ecosystem that feeds itself from the high school into the military service, into the academia, into the business. And there are plenty of examples of companies that were created in this way. And this actually also became a magnet for the giants, Microsoft, Google, Apple and others to open R&D facilities in Israel. Today we have about 300 multinational R&D facilities in Israel, which is quite astonishing. And the last thing I will add to this is the Israeli mindset, what is known as the chutzpah, this urge, this need to be defiant, to try to ask questions, to try to say, why are we doing things this way? Which creates a culture that is very much inducive to and encourages innovations and thinking differently. I will repeat a joke I told before. If you are an entrepreneur and you want to build whatever it is, you can bring any engineer you want and you tell him what you want and he will build to you exactly what you want. If you bring an Israeli engineer, he will tell you, this is not what you want. You want something completely different, let me tell you what you want and how to do it. So, but this is not something that can be taught. And this brings it to the last portion of what you asked me. And the thing I would say is, the first thing that Cyprus shouldn't do is copy-paste. No way. No way. It's the biggest mistake. The only thing you can think about copy-pasting is, how do you take your advantages here and make this into your own special way? And I think that you're on a good path in this regard. I think that every year we see this development, and Cyprus has a lot to offer in this regard. We can speak about e-regulation, we can speak about tax incentives and other things, but I think one of the things you also have, and I will elaborate this in the next question, how do you turn the size of Cyprus, which is a small one, into an advantage? And I will say something about this later.
Thank you very much. Actually, chutzpah, it was the first word that I learned when I went to Israel. And the second one was savlanut, which means patience. I will move to Ms. Schlimm. We know that in Europe, one of the top jurisdictions for startups and for tech companies, it's Berlin. How does the government of Germany supported this vision of making Berlin becoming a top jurisdiction for entrepreneurs and for companies and for startups? And Cyprus being part of European Union as well, what are the practices that Cyprus can adapt from this approach?
Well, Marius, thank you very much. And I'm glad to be here together with my American and Israeli colleague. The Silicon Valley model, Julie, and the strive of Limassol possibly to become a Silicon Valley of the Eastern Mediterranean. Well, I looked at it. We have some valleys in Germany too. There is a Bavarian valley, a valley in Bavarian on quantum technology, where we are possibly good at. In Baden-Württemberg, which is one of our Länder, we have a valley for artificial intelligence. And I was glad to find these examples because recently I went to the Ambassadors Conference in Berlin, and we had a meeting with companies and the industry. And there were two representatives, one of Boehringer Ingelheim and Merckx, which are big German international pharma companies. And they were saying, or that was their thesis, Well, Europe is lagging behind in the struggle competition between China and the United States. Where is Europe keeping its ground, or is it lagging behind? And from that discussion, of course, there were some suggestions for Cyprus being a European country, for Germany in Europe. And for us, for Germany, I mean, we have a very strong industrial base. We have more than 20 Nobel Prize winners, but this is back in the 20th century. Big names like the inventor of the telephone and, of course, automobiles, Daimler-Benz. And recently, we managed in the COVID pandemic to have a vaccine invented by mRNC, which is a Mainz-based biotech company. So yes, we have this strong base, but we need to catch up and stay competitive. And the startup scene, in Berlin is of course a very important part of our high-tech strategy, and we feel it is important to have startups, and there is a lot of incentives either by the government through subsidies, giving coaching and favorable conditions, also attracting skilled workforce, which is important. And I looked at these startups, and 3 of them became quite well known, and especially during the pandemic. One is, I don't know whether you have heard about it, Gorillas. It was recently sold. It's a startup that picks up from the supermarkets goods and brings it directly via an app to the households. The other one, and I think this is a very Berlin-like startup. It's called, let me look at it, Asana Rebel Yoga. So Asana Rebel Yoga offers a program for individual use on an app to give you your individual yoga program, together with nutrition recommendations and how to improve your lifestyle. And a third startup that got very popular during COVID is the HelloFresh. HelloFresh was an initiative whereby fresh products for cooking at home are put together. So you don't need to have a recipe, you don't need to do your shopping. You just order the HelloFresh package. It is delivered to your home, and then you have the full meal. So, from Nobel Prize winners to start-ups, what are the recommendations and what are the lessons? For us, it was very important, the support of the government and the national strategy on startups that was being put up. Then it's all about money and access to venture capital. And the third point I would make is minds. I mean, the competition for getting skilled workforce to Germany, and I understand we will elaborate on that in the second round.
Yeah, basically, since you gave me the pass, I will jump now to this question, because in Europe in general there is now the challenge of attracting talent, because seeing a survey recently at Eurostat, the second sector with the most generation of job creation, it's the tech industry. And the numbers of tech talents in Europe, it cannot satisfy the demand. How is Germany treating this challenge of attracting talent, and what are the plans to retain this talent?
thank you for the question, and it was one of the main topics again at our ambassadors conference in Berlin, beginning of September. I found the figure that we are lacking 400,000 skilled workforce in Germany. 400,000. That is a big number. And I understand that in Silicon Valley, Julie, 2/3 of the workforce in Silicon Valley is from third countries. So you must be doing something right, which we need to improve on. And we have put ourselves on the journey in a very German way. We passed a new law. And with this law, it is different goals to make Germany a land of immigration, of legal immigration, and to make it easier for skilled workforce to come to Germany. And then you have a whole list of different criteria. We start with the visa procedures, make them easier. We start with the language. I mean, German, unfortunately and wrongly so, is regarded to be a difficult language. So we have to reduce the standard for skilled people when it comes to the knowledge of the German language. And I saw qualified people, and they struggle with the language. So we want to change that. Then, of course, and that was mentioned in the last panel, bureaucracy, the recognition of degrees. So we are tackling all these issues, which also means a huge extra workload for our embassies, because the embassies and the visa sections, they are the point of entry, and that is where the applications are done. So we were asked at the conference to be more service friendly, to apply the new rules, and to make it easier. Last point in that context, make it easier also for the families of those who want to come to Germany, to settle and make a living here. But we know we are in competition. We looked at the Canadian model, the so-called Chancenkarte, whereby you have certain points, you trigger, and then you are entitled to a work visa. So we are on our way, and we understand that it is very important for our economy to do better in that area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It was indeed very good to hear this from you. So we are also curious how other countries are driving their strategies onto attracting and retaining tech talent, especially in Europe. I will move back to Ms. Fischer, and we see that during the last years we see a continuous expansion on the relationship between Cyprus and the US, and if I'm not mistaken, a couple of years ago there was also an agreement that was signed. What are your plans in the field of science and technology to further expand this collaboration between Cyprus and the US?
Thanks, Marius. You're exactly right. We did sign a science and technology agreement with Cyprus in 2022, which is intended to really open some doors for further exchanges. And just as we are growing the relationship in all kinds of ways with increased trade ties, economic ties, security and defense ties, right? Really, this is an area I hope to see us do more. I believe there is a lot to be gained for Americans in working with the tech sector here in Cyprus and vice versa. Part of what I think is important in this, part of what is, again, I would suggest important to the tech industry in all three of the countries that we represent, is the sense that that those who are launching an effort, those who are launching a company, those who are bringing their talents to bear, they're bringing workers to a specific place, that people can work in the security that their product is safe and can be brought to market, and certainly that their people are safe, right? There's no question that that's got to be an important element. And so, you know, this is all part of a larger mix. One of the threads that I think goes throughout the last panel and through this panel is what is absolutely essential is that government authorities at every level, whether we're talking about federal authorities, whether we are talking about municipalities, have to understand the impact of any number of decisions on industry, whether we're talking about migration, whether we're talking about tax policy or housing policy, as we heard in the last, education policy. All of this has an incredibly direct impact on the ability of the tech sector to succeed. And you know, what is important to me as I sit here as the United States ambassador is that in the race that we are all engaged in to determine whose values are going to govern technology going forward, whose values will drive the growth in AI, whose values are going to get to the green tech solutions we all need. I believe firmly that it is the United States, it is the member states of the European Union, it is our allies and partners like Israel who should govern that process. And so we've got to be smarter, we've got to work together, we've got to leverage every natural advantage that we uniquely have, no matter whether we are a country is the size of the United States or the size of the Republic of Cyprus, right? We all have inherent advantages that are necessary in this effort, and so it's going to take all of us working together.
Thank you very much. And of course, as TechIsland, we're at your disposal to help towards this direction because it's of course a common goal. And I will move to Israel now. And you are, I think, you are 3 years now in Cyprus? 2 years, okay. What are your plans towards further strengthening the relationship of Cyprus and Israel, especially in the fields of innovation, science, and technology?
Before addressing your question, I just want to say one more thing about chutzpah, about audacity. I mean, you can look at this panel, and I'm here even though, and I am slightly taller than my colleagues, but they represent real giants. I mean, look at the economy of the United States, of Germany, look at our economy. We are a fraction of what they have, but this is where audacity can take you to be part of a panel like this. The second thing I want to say, and this is going back to your question, is, and I want to speak about past, present, and future very quickly. First of all, there's been a lot of cooperation between Israel and Cyprus on the issues of high tech and innovation. One of the biggest projects we had actually was bringing into Israel people from the ecosystem here in Cyprus and training them on issues that are related to entrepreneurship and innovation. There are some faces in the audience I can see now, even though they're not listening to me, that actually took part in this training, and I'm sure she will be more than happy to share with the audience what she learned there. Then, at the moment, as an example, we are about to publish a call to the public. We have a joint agreement between the Ministry of Science in Israel and the Deputy Ministry of Innovation, Research, and Digital Policy here in Cyprus, about €1 million for researchers on both sides to do joint projects. It's another example. The participation in Reflect also for us is an important part of what we are doing. We are bringing here people from Israel to create this kind of cooperation. We have very talented speakers that are going to be in other panels here, and you can hear what they are saying as well. We are now actually assisting an Israeli company to try to scan the landscape of startups here in Cyprus, bringing into Israel several startups for a period of few months for acceleration, and then send them back into Cyprus. And the company wants to do it because they feel they can find talent here, and this process will also enable them to see which are the companies that they can invest into that are worth making a bigger investment into. The Prime Minister of Israel was here only 2 weeks ago, and in his conversation with the President of Cyprus, it was very interesting to hear about the vision that he has and the way that he sees Israel and Cyprus cooperate on this as well. He spoke about this corridor of infrastructure and transportation going all the way from Asia, from India, through the Gulf states, through the Middle East, through Cyprus, into Europe. This is something that Israel and Cyprus can work on. He spoke also about his vision to turn Israel to a world leader on artificial intelligence, that he sees as the most important thing looking into the future and how you can be a global leader. And this is also something we can cooperate together with Cyprus. The last point I want to make in this regard, and I'm going back to what I said before, about this cooperation and how Cyprus can take advantage of its small size. This can be an excellent place for pilot projects. Because you are small, because you are an island, it's like a laboratory that can be used very well for these kind of projects. And actually, I cannot give the details, but hopefully within the next weeks, we will see a very interesting project on issues of energy storage. It's going to be materialized here in Cyprus that will put both Israel and Cyprus in the forefront of energy storage. So, as you can see, there are plenty of things that are being done and will continue to be done because I think this is a very good partnership for both sides.
Thank you very much. At this point, I would like to open the floor to the audience if you have any questions that you want to ask to our guests.
Hello. Okay, I'm Theo Panayotou, rector of the University of Limassol. I, having lived in both the United States for many years and Germany as well, I have to feel so challenged to talk about those huge countries with huge resources and long history in technology. But I feel more closer to Israel, where we share many things, size, history in terms of the few years in which you are an independent state, two countries that face existence risk, and so on. And I would say that we share a lot of other characteristics. For example, no natural resources. That's another characteristic. We have a big diaspora like Israel does. And we have an army. We have 12 universities. We have many colleges, education. We know in Israel what created the startup nation and all this tech country, like Tech Island we call here. It was the contribution of army, one ingredient, of education, the second ingredient, diaspora, third ingredient, the lack of natural resources, fourth ingredient, and fifth ingredient, the small size and all this. We have the same ingredients, but it's like going to a restaurant and two different restaurants, two different chefs. You eat a meal which has exactly the same ingredients, but it tastes different. Maybe there is some secret sauce. So I want to ask you, what was the secret sauce that made Israel start 20, 30 years before Cyprus? Cyprus is starting now. But if we know something about the secret sauce, maybe you can accelerate now the growth of the technology here, of the startups, and everything that Tech Island is trying to do and reflect and so on. So if you tell us a little bit about the secret sauce, I will appreciate it.
I'm very curious to hear the response, actually.
Well, thank you for this, and the check is in the mail. Thank you very much for doing this for us. I appreciate it. Look, it's not a simple question to answer. You pointed out all those ingredients, and it's true, it can happen in other places. It has to do, I think, with the cultural aspect, with the mindset. And it's something that it's I don't want to speak about national characteristics, but I think that in Israel, children from a very young age are being encouraged to take risks. If you don't take risks, okay, you can play it safe, but you know there's a very clear linkage between the risk you take and the profit you make eventually. We have a chief scientist in Israel who said that if the money that he gives, the budget that the government is putting into different startups, if he doesn't fail in 70% of the cases, he doesn't do his job, because it means he doesn't push the envelope strong enough to get to those places that you can really make a difference. So if you if you play it safe, you don't make those kind of huge profits. So he understood that you need to fail, and failure is something which was embraced in Israel. Actually, if you have startups and you have entrepreneurs that haven't failed, investors will be suspicious of them. If you never failed, something is, you didn't take enough of a risk. So if you can bring, and you have on your belts 2-3 failures, and you can explain why it failed and what have you learned from this, you'll be in a better chance to succeed next time. So again, I'm not sure it's a secret sauce, and I'm not sure you can copy this sauce, but I think it's something that has to do with the cultural attitude of people and the willingness to take risks and not be afraid of failure.
Thank you very much. I think we have approached, because we passed our time for our lunch, so I will close the panel here. I would like to thank you for your responses. I'm taking, Mr. Theo said he asked about the ingredients. Apart from what he said, I basically took out 4 main ingredients. You need to set the vision, you need to create the mindset, you need to have governmental support, and you need to have the support of the academia as well. At least from your responses, that was, I perceive that it's the source as Mr. Theo is referring to. So thank you for your time, and thank you everyone for being here. We are going to have a break, and we continue at 2 o'clock.